Item 685. Roadside flashing beacon assemblies. 1. Description. Installation. Furnish, fabricate, and erect roadside flashing beacon assemblies. Relocation. Remove and relocate existing roadside flashing beacon assemblies. Removal. Remove existing roadside flashing beacon assemblies. 2. Materials. Furnish new materials in accordance with the following items and details shown on the plans. Item 441, Steel structures. Item 442, Metal for structures. Item 445, Galvanizing. Item 449, Anchor bolts. Item 656, Foundations for traffic control devices. Provide pre-qualified flasher controller assemblies from the department's MPL in accordance with DMS 11160, Flasher Controller Assembly. Provide pre-qualified pedestal pole bases from the department's MPL in accordance with DMS 11140, Pedestal pole base. When shown on the plans, provide pre-qualified solar-powered flasher controller assemblies from the department's MPL in accordance with DMS 11150, Solar Power Flasher Controller Assembly. 3. Construction. Install foundations for installation and relocation in accordance with Item 656, Foundations for traffic control devices. 3.1 Fabrication. Provide poles and bases in accordance with Item 687, Pedestal pole assemblies. Provide mild steel anchor bolts in accordance with Item 449, Anchor bolts. Use galvanized bolts, nuts, and washers. 3.2 Galvanizing. Galvanize all fabricated parts in accordance with Item 445, Galvanizing. Repair galvanizing for any steel part or member damaged in assembly, transit, or erection, or any steel part or member welded after galvanizing, in accordance with Section 445.3.5, repairs. 3.3 Installation. Install roadside flashing beacon assemblies at the locations shown on the plans or as directed. Stake the assembly locations for verification by the engineer unless otherwise shown on the plans. Install pole, breakaway base, connectors, wiring, signal beacons, sign, and foundation as shown on the plans, or as directed. Install the flasher controller assembly on the electrical service pole. Install watertight breakaway electrical fuse holders in all line and neutral conductors at the breakaway base. Use established industry and utility safety practices to erect assemblies near overhead or underground utilities. Consult with the appropriate utility company before beginning such work. Install solar panels, batteries, and battery box, when required, as shown on the plans or as directed. 3.4 Relocation. Disconnect and isolate the electrical power supply before removal of the assembly. Remove existing assembly as directed. Salvage existing components such as sign, beacons, pole, and base unless otherwise directed. Repair or replace lost or damaged components as directed. Relocate existing assembly to the location shown on the plans or as directed. Install existing assembly at new foundations in accordance with Section 685.3.3, Installation. Remove existing foundations in accordance with Section 685.3.5, Removal. Accept ownership of unsalvageable materials and dispose of in accordance with federal, state, and local regulations. 3.5 Removal. Disconnect and isolate existing electrical power supplies before removal of the assembly. Remove existing sign panel, beacons, pole, and base from existing assembly. Store items to be reused or salvaged without damaging. Store sign panels above the ground in a vertical position at locations shown on the plans or as directed. Accept ownership of unsalvageable materials and dispose of in accordance with federal, state, and local regulations. Remove abandoned foundations, including steel, to 2 feet below the finished grade unless otherwise shown on the plans. Backfill with material equal in composition and density to the surrounding area, and replace any surfacing, such as asphalt pavement or concrete riprap, with like material to equivalent condition. For measurement. This item will be measured by each installed, relocated, or removed roadside flashing beacon assembly. 5. Payment. The work performed and materials furnished in accordance with this item and measured as provided under measurement will be paid for at the unit price bid for install roadside flashing beacon assemblies, install roadside flashing beacon assemblies, solar powered, relocate roadside flashing beacon assemblies, relocate roadside flashing beacon assemblies, solar powered, remove roadside flashing beacon assemblies, or remove roadside flashing beacon assemblies, solar powered. The department will pay for electrical energy consumed by the roadside flashing beacon. New conduit will be paid for under item 618, conduit, except for conduit in the foundation and within 6 inches of the foundation. New electrical conductors will be paid for under item 620, electrical conductors. New tray cable will be paid for under item 621, tray cable. New duct cable will be paid for under item 622, duct cable. New ground boxes will be paid for under item 624, ground boxes. New electrical services will be paid for under item 628, electrical services. New signs will be paid for under item 636, signs. New signal heads will be paid for under item 682, vehicle and pedestrian signal heads. New traffic signal cable will be paid for under item 684, traffic signal cables. 5.1 Installation. This price is full compensation for furnishing, fabricating, galvanizing, assembling, and erecting the roadside flashing beacon assemblies including poles and bases, solar power flashing controller assemblies including battery box, when required, foundations, conduit in the foundation and within 6 inches of the foundation, furnishing and placing anchor bolts, nuts, washers, and templates, controller, and materials, equipment, labor, tools, and incidentals. 5.2 Relocation. This price is full compensation for removing the roadside flashing beacon assemblies, removing battery box, when required, removing existing foundations, installing new foundations, installing new conduit in the foundation and within 6 inches of the foundation, furnishing, fabricating, and installing any new components as required and replacing the assembly on its new foundations with all manipulations and electrical work, controller, salvaging, disposal of unsalvageable materials, loading and hauling, and materials, equipment, labor, tools, and incidentals. 5.3 Removal. This price is full compensation for removing the various roadside flashing beacon assemblies components, removing the foundations, storing the components to be reused or salvaged, disposal of unsalvageable materials, backfilling and surface placement, loading and hauling, and materials, equipment, tools, labor, and incidentals.